The wind outside was sharp and cold, carrying little flakes of snow that danced in the air. Selora Vane parked her car in front of her daughter's house and turned off the engine. The sun had already set, and the neighborhood was quiet except for the soft crunch of snow under her boots. She smiled to herself, thinking about the smell of roasted turkey and the sound of her grandson laughing when he saw her walk in. She stepped out and pulled her coat tighter. The house was glowing warmly from the windows. For a moment, everything felt perfect until she heard it. A faint rhythmic sound. Bang, bang, bang. Selora froze. It wasn't coming from the front door or the side yard. It was coming from the garage. She frowned, her grandmother's instinct kicking in. Carefully, she walked toward the sound, her boots leaving a trail in the snow. When she reached the garage, she pressed her ear to the big metal door. The banging was louder now. And then she heard it, a small, muffled sob. Her heart dropped. "Eloan," she called softly. There was a pause, then a shaky little voice answered. "Grandma?" Selora's blood went cold. She rushed to the side door of the garage. It was locked. She fumbled with the spare key she always kept on her keychain and pushed it open. The icy air hit her face as she stepped inside. The garage was dimly lit by a single bulb. On the cold concrete floor sat Eloan, her 7-year-old grandson. He was curled up, hugging his knees, wearing just a thin t-shirt and shorts. His lips were pale, and his small body trembled. Selora gasped and ran to him, dropping to her knees. "Oh, my sweet boy." She pulled off her scarf and wrapped it around him, rubbing his arms to warm him. "Why are you out here?" she asked, her voice tight with worry. "I spilled juice on the table," Eloan whispered, his teeth chattering. "Dad got mad. He said I had to stay here until dinner was over." Selora's eyes burned with anger. Locked in a freezing garage? Over spilled juice? She glanced around. There was no heater running. The floor was like ice. If she hadn't come early, who knew how long he would have been left here? "Come on, sweetheart," she said firmly, lifting him up. He clung to her, his small arms wrapping around her neck. "You're coming inside with me." She held him tightly, feeling his little body shiver against her chest. Each step toward the house made her anger rise. She could hear voices and laughter from inside, her daughter Muriel and son-in-law Corvin, sitting at the dinner table, talking as if everything was normal. Selora opened the interior door to the kitchen and stepped in. The warmth of the house hit her, but it did nothing to cool the fire in her chest. She looked at the table. There they were, Muriel, her only daughter, smiling as she refilled her wine glass, and Corvin, leaning back in his chair, laughing at something he just said. They turned to look at her, surprised. "What's wrong?" Muriel asked, the smile fading from her face. Selora's voice was like ice. "What's wrong? I just found your son locked in the garage. Freezing." The room fell silent. Even the clinking of forks stopped. Corvin frowned, annoyed more than guilty. "It was just for a few minutes," he said casually. "He needs to learn consequences." "Consequences?" Selora's voice shook now, her anger boiling over. "He is 7 years old, Corvin. It's below freezing outside. Do you have any idea what could have happened to him?" Eloan buried his face in her shoulder, not wanting to look at his parents. Selora's eyes were blazing now. "This is not discipline. This is cruelty. If I hadn't come early, he would still be out there, shaking in the cold." Muriel opened her mouth but didn't speak. Corvin shifted in his chair, uncomfortable. The happy, warm dinner atmosphere had been shattered in seconds. Selora didn't wait for them to argue. She carried Eloan to the living room couch, wrapped him in a blanket, and sat down next to him, rubbing his hands to get them warm. Her mind was already made up. Tonight was not going to end the way Muriel and Corvin planned. Dinner could wait. Wine could wait. The safety of her grandson came first. And as Selora sat there, glaring toward the dining room, one thought kept running through her mind. This ends tonight. Selora sat on the couch, her arms still wrapped tightly around Eloan. The little boy's body had finally stopped trembling, though the fear in his eyes lingered. He glanced toward the dining room, where his parents still sat, their forks paused midair. Selora's gaze followed his. She could see the shock on Muriel's face, quickly replaced by defensiveness, while Corvin's frown was growing deeper. His lips pressed into a thin line, but his eyes flickered with irritation, not guilt. "Selora," Muriel started, her voice shaky but trying to sound calm. "He only stayed there for a few minutes. You're overreacting. He needed a lesson." "Lesson?" Selora repeated, her voice low but deadly. "A lesson that leaves a child freezing in a garage? That's not teaching, Muriel." That's abuse. He's 7. 7 years old. Do you hear me? Aloan buried his face into Celora's shoulder, shaking his head slightly. I was so cold, Grandma. I thought you forgot me, he whispered, barely audible. Celora's chest tightened. She hugged him closer. I would never forget you, sweetheart. But they left you alone like this. Corvin's jaw tightened. He made a mess. I was just teaching him responsibility. You always overreact. Celora stood, placing Aloan gently on the couch. Her eyes locked on Corvin's. Responsibility? He's a child. Responsibility does not mean leaving him to suffer. You're supposed to protect him, not punish him like a criminal. The room was thick with tension. Muriel opened her mouth to say something, but Celora raised a hand. No, Muriel. Not a word. I want Corvin to answer me first. How can you sit there, drinking wine, laughing with me walking in, knowing your child was out there, freezing? Corvin leaned back in his chair, his hands gripping the table. His usual arrogance was replaced by unease, though he tried to hide it. He'll be fine. Kids are tougher than you think. Celora's eyes narrowed. Tough. He's a little boy. His lips were blue, his fingers were numb, and he was crying. You think that's tough? Aloan whimpered softly. They didn't care, Grandma. Celora's heart ached. She felt a storm rising inside her, anger, fear, disbelief, all at once. You don't care? You don't care that your son could have gotten sick? That he could have hurt himself? That's not parenting. That's cruelty. And I won't stay silent while it happens under my roof. Muriel's face turned pale. Her hands fidgeted with her napkin, eyes avoiding Celora's gaze. It wasn't that bad, she murmured. Celora shook her head. Not that bad? You call freezing in a dark garage, not that bad. Do you have any idea what could have happened if I hadn't arrived? Corvin slammed his hand on the table. Enough. You're making this bigger than it is. He needed a small punishment. That's all. Celora stepped closer, pointing her finger at him. Small punishment? You call freezing your son a punishment? I saw him. Pale. Shivering. Scared out of his mind. And you laughed while he suffered. You call that a lesson? The room fell silent. The only sound was the faint hum of the heater in the living room and Aloan's soft sniffles. Celora's voice softened slightly, but it carried a weight that silenced even Corvin. I've raised my children with love and respect. I have never used fear to teach a lesson. And I will not stand by while you do this to my grandson. Not in my house. Not under my watch. Muriel finally spoke, her voice trembling. Mom, please, you don't understand. We were just… Celora cut her off. No, I understand perfectly. You were enjoying dinner while your child suffered. That's what I understand. Aloan peeked out from behind Celora's shoulder. Mom, Dad. I was scared. I don't want this to happen again. His small voice trembled and tears ran down his cheeks. Muriel's eyes filled with tears, and she looked away. Corvin's face hardened, but Celora could see the first cracks in his confident mask. Celora took a deep breath. I'm not going to yell anymore. I'm not going to threaten. But hear me clearly, from now on, if you put Aloan in danger again, I will take action. You hear me? Corvin's lips pressed into a thin line, but he said nothing. Muriel nodded slightly, too shaken to speak. Celora walked over and knelt next to Aloan again. She hugged him tightly. You're safe now, my love. Grandma's here. You will never have to feel that fear alone again. Aloan's little arms wrapped around her neck, and he whispered, Thank you, Grandma. I love you. Celora kissed the top of his head. I love you too, sweetheart. Always. As she looked back toward the dining room, she realized something. Tonight was only the beginning. The confrontation had shown her the true nature of Muriel and Corvin's priorities. And if she didn't act carefully, their habits could put Aloan in danger again. Her mind raced. She needed a plan. Not a revenge plan. Not even a punishment plan. A protection plan. And as she stared at her daughter and son-in-law, who still sat frozen at the table, she knew one thing. Nothing would ever be the same again. The warmth of the house no longer felt comforting. It felt like a battlefield. And Celora was ready to fight, not with anger, but with strategy, courage, and love. Celora sat in her quiet living room later that night, Aloan asleep in the guest room under her careful watch. She couldn't stop thinking about the dinner table confrontation. Her daughter and son-in-law had tried to act normal, but she had seen the cracks in their masks. The way they laughed while her grandson shivered in the garage, it wasn't just cruel. It was dangerous. She knew she needed proof. Words alone wouldn't change them. She had to show the world, or at least someone who could make them understand, that what they had done was unacceptable. But how? Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint sound from the garage. She froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. Could it be? No, she had already checked. The garage was empty. Still, the sound lingered, a faint scrape, almost like something moving. Selora grabbed a flashlight and stepped cautiously into the hallway. "Hello," she called softly, her voice steady despite the fear creeping in. No answer. She crept closer to the garage door, her hand trembling slightly as she reached for the handle. The smell of cold metal and faint oil filled her nose. She pushed the door open slowly, flashlight in hand. Empty. Nothing but shadows and the faint echo of her own heartbeat. Selora exhaled sharply, shaking her head. She had to focus. She couldn't let fear distract her. She needed to find proof. Her eyes fell on the security camera in the corner of the garage, a small, dome-shaped device she had installed a few months ago when Aloan had started exploring the house alone. She hadn't thought she'd need it for this. But now it was the perfect tool. She pulled out her phone and connected to the camera's feed. The screen showed the entire garage in grainy black and white, but it was enough. And there it was, timestamped just an hour ago. Aloan, shivering, crouched in the corner, his small body trembling. Selora's chest tightened. She could see everything. The way he had tried to curl into himself for warmth, the way he had looked toward the garage door every few seconds, hoping someone would come. And then she saw them. Muriel and Corvin, standing at the dining room window, laughing and talking, completely ignoring him. Anger surged through Selora, but this time it wasn't blind rage. It was focused, precise. She had the evidence she needed. But she also realized something terrifying. If they could laugh while their own child suffered, what else were they hiding? Selora knew she couldn't confront them again without a plan. This had to be bigger than words. It had to hit them where it hurt, their pride, their image, their future. She spent the next hour reviewing the footage, taking screenshots, making notes. Every second of Aloan's fear, every smirk from Corvin and Muriel, was documented. She labeled everything carefully. This wasn't about revenge, it was about protection. Just as she finished, her phone buzzed. A message from a friend she trusted. "Are you free to talk? You sounded upset earlier. I can come by." Selora hesitated. Could she involve someone else? She needed help, yes, but she also needed discretion. If anyone found out too soon, Corvin could destroy the evidence, manipulate the situation, or worse, punish Aloan again. She typed back quickly. "Yes, come over. It's urgent. Bring your laptop." A few minutes later, her friend arrived. Selora led them to the garage and showed them the security feed. Her friend's eyes widened in disbelief. "Selora, this is serious. You have to report this. Child services, police, someone has to see this." Selora nodded. "I know, but I can't just call them. I need a plan. If I rush, Corvin and Muriel will cover their tracks. I need to protect Aloan first, then expose them. Everything has to be precise." Her friend looked concerned. "Are you sure you can handle this? It's dangerous to go against them." Selora's jaw tightened. "I have to. Aloan can't go back there. Not tonight, not ever. I'll do whatever it takes. And this time, there's no way they'll escape consequences." That night, Selora couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed, mind racing with strategies, contingency plans, and worst-case scenarios. She thought about Corvin's cold eyes, Muriel's hesitant compliance, and Aloan's trembling form. One thing was clear. She couldn't trust them with him again. The next morning, she prepared carefully. She pretended everything was normal, keeping her voice calm and demeanor light. Muriel and Corvin had no idea that Selora had reviewed the footage, had proof, and had already set things in motion. She spent the day subtly observing their interactions, noting every careless smile, every dismissive glance. She recorded it all, without them knowing, without Aloan seeing. Each piece of information would serve her plan. By evening, Selora's resolve had strengthened. She had decided that she wouldn't just protect Aloan. She would make sure no parent in her situation could get away with such cruelty. And as she tucked Aloan into bed that night, she whispered softly, "I promise, my love. I will never let anyone hurt you like that again. I will keep you safe. I will protect you. And one day, they will see exactly what they've done." Little did Selora know, the next day would bring revelations far more shocking than she could imagine. Secrets she had never suspected, lies that had been hidden for years, and a truth that would turn her world upside down. But for now, she held Aloan close, knowing that for the first time, he was truly safe. The morning sun streamed through the living room windows, but Selora hardly noticed. She had barely slept, thinking through every step of the plan. Today would decide everything. Today, the truth would finally come out. Selora started by making breakfast for Aloan. She kept her movements casual, smiling gently as he ate. "Did you sleep well, my love?" she asked softly. Aloan nodded, clutching his small teddy bear. He trusted her completely now, and Selora knew she had to protect that trust at all costs. Meanwhile, in the dining room, Muriel and Corvin were already bickering over something trivial. Their voices carried a false sense of normalcy, but Selora could hear the tension in every word. They had no idea what she knew, and that made her feel both powerful and anxious. Selora took a deep breath and called Muriel over, pretending to be casual. "Can you come here for a minute? I need to talk about Aloan." Muriel raised an eyebrow but walked over. "Sure, Mom. What is it?" she asked, her voice light, as if she knew nothing was wrong. Selora's friend arrived at the same time, carrying the laptop with the security footage. Selora gestured for her to set it up quietly. Within seconds, the screen was displaying the moments from the garage, the cold, shivering form of Aloan, the laughter from the dining room, and the complete disregard of his parents. Muriel's face changed instantly. Her eyes widened, then narrowed. "Mom, that's not," she started, but Selora raised a hand. "Look at this carefully," Selora said calmly. "This is exactly what you did while your son froze in the garage. Explain yourself." Corvin stepped in, trying to laugh it off, but his voice was shaky. "It was just a joke. He was fine. You're overreacting." Selora shook her head, holding back tears of anger. "A joke? My grandson could have died. You think this is funny? Look at him." She pointed to the screen, where Aloan's small figure shivered in silence. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The room was heavy with tension. Selora's friend quietly recorded everything, ensuring there would be no escape for them. And then the twist hit. Muriel's phone buzzed. She glanced at it quickly and froze. Selora noticed immediately. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steady but cold. Muriel's hands trembled as she held the phone. On the screen were messages from someone named Kane, revealing that Corvin had been planning this cruelty long before Selora even suspected. It wasn't just a moment of thoughtlessness. It was intentional. Selora's jaw tightened. She had suspected neglect, but she hadn't imagined it could be premeditated. And then the messages revealed something else. Corvin had been hiding money and assets, planning to leave the family without legal guardianship if anyone interfered. They weren't just cruel. They were manipulative, selfish, and dangerous. Corvin's face turned pale. Muriel's eyes filled with tears, not for Aloan, but for herself, realizing she had been a pawn. Selora felt a mixture of anger and pity. She could see now why Muriel had sometimes hesitated, why she had allowed certain things to happen. Selora stood tall. "Everything is out now. You can't hide it anymore. You both endangered a child, and you planned it. That's not just wrong, it's criminal. Do you understand what this means?" Aloan, who had been watching quietly from the side, clutched Selora's hand. He didn't need her to explain. He knew this was serious. Selora's friend, still recording, added, "We're sending this to the authorities. Child services, police, they need to see exactly what happened. You cannot stop this." Corvin tried to protest, tried to explain himself, but the evidence was overwhelming. The footage, the messages, everything painted a clear picture. He stammered, it wasn't supposed to." Selora cut him off. "It doesn't matter what you intended. You did it. And now there are consequences." Muriel broke down completely. I didn't know. I thought it would be okay. I didn't realize." Her voice trailed off as she buried her face in her hands. Selora took a deep breath. She knew there was no turning back. "The most important thing now is Aloan. He stays with me until this is resolved. He will never be hurt by you again." Corvin tried to argue, but Selora stood firm. The friend whispered, "We'll make sure the authorities see everything. No one can undo what they've done, but we can protect Aloan from now on." Selora hugged her grandson tightly. He rested his head on her shoulder, finally feeling safe. She whispered, "It's okay now, my love. You're safe. I promise." For the first time in weeks, Aloan relaxed. He smiled faintly, trusting her completely. Selora knew there would be challenges ahead, the legal battles, the accusations, the tension, but she also knew that today she had won. She had protected him. The shocking twist, The revelation that Corvin had planned the cruelty and Muriel's complicity had changed everything. What had started as a moment of anger had exposed deep lies and hidden truths. By the evening, the authorities had been contacted, lawyers prepared, and Aloan's well-being prioritized. Selora sat in the quiet house, exhausted but relieved. She knew that justice would take time, but at least her grandson was safe, and the truth was finally out. And as she looked at Aloan sleeping peacefully, she realized something important. Sometimes, the most shocking truths don't come from what you see, but from what people try to hide. Selora whispered to herself, "This is just the beginning. But from now on, nothing will ever hurt my family again."